Good morning, everyone. I am Carla A. Nabo together with my partners, starting with Mr. Floyd Nieva and Mr. Jade Nemo, and our topic is all about human ecology and succession. Ecology is the science studying how organisms interact with each other and physical environment. The word ecology is derived from two Greek words, ekos, meaning house, habitation, or place of living, and logos meaning study. So ecology plays important role in first human welfare, second agriculture, the third management of grasslands, forestry, fifth biological survey, six pest control and conservation of wildlife. The international problem of environment population also needs ecological assistance. Human ecology is a discipline that deals with the relationship between human societies and their natural, social, and created environments. Now, let us proceed in several basic controls govern population size. The environment is the ultimate cause of population stabilization. Two categories of factors are commonly used, which is physical environment and biological environment. So, in physical environment, factors include food, shelter, water supply, space availability, and for animals, soil and light. One of these factors may severely limit population size, even if the others are not as constrained. So here in physical environment, it also include light and heat or solar radiation, moisture, wind, oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients is in soil, water, and atmosphere. The biological role played by a species in the environment is called a niche. So here in biological environment includes organisms of all kind as well as plants and animals. Let's proceed. Niche overlap. In nature, this is rather rare. While owls and foxes may compete for a common food source, there are alternate sources of food available which is called niche overlap and said to be minimal. So there are three subdivisions of the biological environment which are competition, predation, and symbiosis. So why these predators important? So predators kill and consume other organisms. Carnivores prey on animals, herbivores consume plants. Predators usually limit the prey population, although in extreme cases they can drive the prey to extinction. We have here three major reasons why predators rarely kill and eat all the prey. First, prey species often involve protective mechanisms such as camouflage, poisons, spines, or large size to deter predation. The second one is prey species often have refuges where predators cannot reach them. The last one, often the predators will switch its prey as the prey species becomes lower in abundance, or which is called prey switching. This diagram shows the numbers of wolves and moose that the times goes by they instinct. Moose and wolf fluctuations in predator which is wolf and prey which is moose populations over a 40 years span. Take note that the effect of declines in the wolf population in the late 1960s and again in the early 1980s on the moose population. Let's proceed to symbiosis. Symbiosis has come to include all species interactions besides predation and competition. Mutualism is a symbiosis where both parties benefit. Parasitism is also a symbiosis where one species benefits while harming the other one. Parasites act more slowly than predators and often do not kill their hosts. Now let's move on population decline and extinction. Extinction is the elimination of all individuals in a group. Local extinction is the loss of all individuals in a population. Species extinction occurs when all members of a species and its component populations go extinct. The example for population decline and extinction: when people move away from villages, jobs, schools, shops, and other facilities also disappear. Then the government needs to tackle the causes and effects of population decline, for instance by cutting down on the number of new homes being built. So the ultimate cause of decline and extinction is environmental changes. The changes is one of the physical factors of the environment may cause the decline and extinction. Likewise, the fossils record indicates that some extinctions are caused by migration of a competitors. The causes of population extinction. The main direct causes of extinction are loss and degradation of habitats due to human use of land and seas, overexploitation of wild population, and the impacts on population and ecological communities of invasive alien species population and climate change. And also the other causes of this population declines, the size and demographic of the population change when fewer children are born. Families with children move to larger towns and cities. Wild vertebrate animal populations have declined by two-thirds in the period the animal's population has doubled. It shows that before 1970, where the numbers of these elephants are higher, but it has a lesser number of humans. But when the number of humans gets doubles, it's times for the number of elephants get lesser and lesser, because before human hunts the elephant as their food. The percentage number of humans gets positive 103%, while the elephant is negative 68%. Let's proceed to human population decline. Dramatic declines in human population happen periodically in response to an infectious disease. Bubonic plague infection killed half of Europe's population between 1346 and 1350. Later plagues until 1700 killed one quarter of the European populace. Smallpox and other diseases disseminate indigenous population in North and South America. Sa atin sa Philippines, we have human population declines when the pandemic times, kung saan maraming namatay due to these diseases. This graph shows the relationship of human population and extinction.
Next, we have human impact. Human populations have continued to increase due to use of technology that has disrupted natural populations. The stabilization of populations leads to possible outcomes such as population growth as previous limits are removed o yung pagtaas ng population. Next, we have population decline as new limits are imposed or yun naman yung pagbaba ng population. Agriculture and animal domestication are examples of population increase of favored organisms. In England, alone more than 300,000 cats are put to sleep per year. Yet, before the domestication, the wild cat ancestors were rare and probably occupied only a small area in the Middle East. Next, we have population impact. Pollutants generally are releases of substances into the air and water. Many lakes often have nitrogen and phosphorus as limiting nutrients for aquatic and terrestrial plants. Runoff from agricultural fertilizers increases these nutrients, leading to runaway plant growth. Increased plant populations eventually lead to increased bacterial populations that reduce oxygen levels in the water, causing fish and other organisms to suffocate. Next, we have removal of predators. Predator release is common where humans hunt, trap, or otherwise reduce predator populations, allowing the prey population to increase. Elimination of wolves and panthers has led to increase in their natural prey, which is the deer. There are more deer estimated in the United States than there was when Europeans arrived. Large deer population often cause overgrazing that in turn leads to starvation of the deer. So here is an example of illustration of a wolf and a deer. Next, we have introduction of new species. Introduction of exotic or alien non-native species into new areas is perhaps the greatest single factor to affect the natural population. So yung mga non-native species or yung mga ligaw na species of animals are one of the factors to affect the natural populations. More than 1,500 exotic insect species and more than 25 families of alien fish have been introduced into North America. In excess of 3,000 plant species have also been introduced. So here is an example of invasive species like frogs, snakes, water lilies, and etc. So next we have alternating population growth. Humans can remove or alter the constraints on population sizes with both good and bad consequences. On the negative side, about 17% of the 1,500 introduced insect species required the use of pesticides to control them. For example, African killer bees are expanding their population and migrating from northward from South America. These killer bees are much more aggressive than the natives and destroy native honeybee population. Next, we have altering population growth. On a positive note, human-induced population explosions can provide needed resources for growing human populations. Agriculture now produces more food per acre, allowing and sustaining increased human population size. So next we have habitat. Habitat disruption is the disturbance of the physical environment of a species. For example, cutting a forest or draining wetlands. Habitat disruption is currently the leading cause of extinction. So sabi dito, the loss in habitat is the leading cause of extinction of a certain species. So next we have changes in the biological environment occur in three ways. First, we have species introduction. An exotic species is introduced into an area where it may have no predators to control its population size or where it can greatly outcompete native organisms. Second, we have overhunting. So overhunting happens when a predator population increases or becomes more efficient at killing the prey. The prey population may decline or go extinct. So kung yung sa species introduction ay walang kakompetensya, dito sa overhunting ay meron na siyang kompetensya which is the predator. So in the human prehistory, we may have caused the extinction of the mammoths and mastodons due to increased human hunting skills. Last, we have secondary extinction. Secondary extinction is the loss of food species, can cause migration or extinction of any species that depends largely or solely on that species as a food source. So for example, for every bird or mammal that goes extinct, one or several species also will likely disappear because of the loss of food species. So, ganun naman po dito sa secondary extinction. Overkill is the shooting, trapping, or hunting of a species, usually for sport or economic reasons. However, many large animals have been eliminated or had their populations drastically reduced, such as tigers, elephants, and leopards. Next, we have species loss. It is the death of one species or population. Can cause the decline or elimination of others, a process known as secondary extinction. So the destruction of bamboo forests in China, the food for the giant panda may cause the extinction of the panda. The extinction of the dodo bird has caused the calvera tree to become unable to reproduce, since the dodo birds ate the fruit and processed the seeds of the tree.
So let's proceed on ecological succession. So there are two main types of ecological succession, which is the primary and secondary successions. So the process of creating life in an area where no life previously existed is the primary succession. So secondary succession means is the process of restabilization that follows a disturbance in an area where life has formed an ecosystem. So, ecological succession is a natural and gradual changes in types of species that live in an area, so can be primary or secondary. So, the gradual replacement of one plant community by another through a natural process over time. So, let's proceed on primary succession. So, the development of an area in an ecosystem that has never had a community living within it occurs a process of primary succession. So, an example of an area in which a community has never lived before is to be or would be a new lava or rock from a volcano that makes a new island. So, primary succession begins in a place without any soil. So, in the beginning, there is only rock, sand, and volcanic ash. So, since there is no soil, there is no community. So, why is there no soil? So, in order there to be soil, there must be a nutrients like nitrogen. So, primary succession begins from pioneer stages, intermediate stages, and climax community. Primary succession, it takes over a long period of time. It takes 100 or hundreds of years. So, primary succession begins from pioneer stages, which is the lichens begin growing on a rock. So, lichens sa Bicol is apgo. So, over many years, lichens break down rock into sand. So, weathering and erosion break down rock into sand. So, lichens that do not need soil to survive. So, they are called pioneer species. So, lichens grow larger. Some die. Decomposers arrive and break down the lichen. So, the dead lichens and waste materials of the decomposers so enrich the sun. So, it becomes like the fertilizer of the soil. So, nitrogen cycle begins eventually enough nutrients to enter the sand and it becomes soil. So seeds are blown in by the wind or carried in by animals. So simple plants like mosses can be grow in the new soil. So the plants grow and the soil gets enriched as plants die. So herbs and weeds can grow in thicker and enriched soil. So the pioneer stages begin from lichens, mosses, and herbs and weeds to grow thicker. So it the primary succession begins from small plants. So the simple plants die. So adding more organic material. So the soil layer thickens and the grasses, wildflowers, and other plants begin to take over. So medium-sized animals and birds make their their habitat. So the vegetations grow closer together, reducing the amount of space available for growing. So the competition begins in lichen and shrubs. So for the same space. Eventually, one species will die. So like lichens and shrubs will be survivor or will survive. So these plants die and add more nutrients to the soil. So shrubs and trees can survive now. So insects, small birds, and mammals had begun to move in, like fox, other wild animals. So what was once bare rock now supports a variety of life. So these plants die or and add more nutrients to the soil. So now larger trees can grow like beech or oak, walnut, maple, and etc. So what is climax community? So climax community is a mature, stable community that is the final stage of ecological succession. So in an ecosystem with the climax community, the conditions continue to be suitable for all the members of the community. So any particular region has its own set of climax species, which are the plants that are best adapted for that area will persist after a succession has finished, so until another disturbance clears the area. So these are the climax community like desert, Sahara, forest, and rainforest. So a summary of changes that occur during the succession. So the pioneer species colonize a bare or distributed site, which is the soil building. Changes in the physical environment occur. Example for this is the light and moisture. So new species of plants displace existing plants because their seedlings are better able to become established in the change of environment. So new living or arriving species after the physical conditions often in ways that enable other species to become established. So animals come with or after the plants, so they need to survive. So eventually a climax community that is more or less stable will become established and have the ability to reproduce itself. So these disturbances will start the process of succession again. So threats to climax community. So for primary succession is the forest part, human building, cities and roads. So flooding and volcanic eruption. So example again is the clearing of a community for agricultural purposes, which is the farm and etc. So anything that destroys the existing community is the threat for climax community. So but much of the soil remains. So sometimes some of the organisms remain as well. So let's proceed on secondary succession. So organisms are destroyed but the soil is safe. So the soil is already contains the seeds of weeds, grasses, and trees. So more seeds are carried to the area by winds and birds. So succession begins again, but the primary species are different. So because soil is present or soil is present, this succession is faster. So this is the secondary succession on abandoned cornfield. So this is the illustration of ecological successions. So from fire, which is the threat for climax community, pioneer species, intermediate species, and the climax community. So it takes about 150 plus years to finish the ecological succession or the secondary succession. So first is some seeds in the soil begin to grow. So larger shrubs move in like in the previous succession. So fast growing trees such as pines move in. So these are followed by slower growing hardwood trees like oak, maple, and etc. So years after cultivation. So this is the illustration of uh, different secondary successions. So succession comes from uh, seeds to grow from growth of bigger trees, and some secondary succession begins from bigger trees to small trees. So climax community as a stable group of plants and animals that is end result of the succession process. So does not always mean big trees. So grasses in prairies or cacti in desert. So insects. So nationwide 70 million acres of public and private lands are the serious risks from insect and disease. This is the threat for climax community for secondary succession. So across the south, in other area was biggest forest management challenges in southern pine beetle. So attacking timber standards throughout the region of America. So the southern pine beetle outbreak has caused timber value losses to over 1.5 billion dollars. So this is the picture of pests like insects, gypsy moth, and Lamantria dispar. So some threat to climax community for secondary succession is the disease of plants. So forest pests and disease have seriously harmed the environment and have imposed significant costs to the U.S. economy. So exotic pests and pathogens such as chestnut blight, Dutch elm disease, and beech bark disease have a profound effect on eastern forests. So management of these pests and disease have been impacted by a variety of factors such as forest fragmentation, increasing and human population, and expansion of invasive species. So prompt identification and treatment of the forest disease often means the difference between losing or saving a valuable forest island. So this is the picture of anosome root disease. So let's proceed on invasive plants. So invasive species have been characterized by a catastrophic wildfire. So in slow motion, so thousands of non-native invasive plants have infested millions of acres of land and water across the nation. So this invader caused massive disruption in ecosystem by reducing the biodiversity and degrading of the health of nations' forests, prairies, mountain, wetlands, rivers, and oceans. So they have the capacity to dominate, overwhelm, or wipe out the native species living in that environment or community. So the financial impact from invasive species infestation in United States has been estimated at $138 billion in total economic damages and associated control costs. So this is the picture of Congo grass, which is the invasive plants or alien plants that are not commonly native from United States. So how do humans affect ecological succession? So clearing the land for garden and preparing the soil for planting is a type of major external event that is radically restructured. This is disrupt a previously stabilized ecosystem. So this disturbance may immediately begin a process called ecological succession. So does ecological succession ever stop? So over a long period of time, the climate conditions of an ecosystem is bound to change. So no ecosystem has existed or will remain unchanged over a geological time scale. So I will leave a message from the Bible, which is the book Proverbs 9 verse 10. So the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So the knowledge of the holy is understanding. So that's all. Thank you and God bless everyone. So I hope you learned something.